going on. But we follow this list because it's a widely accepted list, okay? Which means that if you're here and you're off on vacation or you're out of town and you drop in on another synagogue somewhere, you'll pick up with the same readings. We're in sync with each other. And I think that's a good idea, even though this one is full of surprises. Like right now, for the next 2 weeks, we don't read a regular reading from the book of Pesach. We have some special readings. And if you're not aware of that and keeping up with it, and it can happen to any of us, you'll catch your surprise because guess what? The midrash you prepared for this week is for 2 weeks from now, so you have to do another one, right? And so that's what we are doing. We are now reading some of the special readings for these 2 weeks around Pesach. And the very first one that we're studying today is entitled Pesach, which tells you, what do you think this midrash is going to be about today? Pesach. What have we been studying for the last week or so? Pesach. Okay? It's from Shemot chapter 12, 21 through 51. And our Haftorah portion is going to be from the book of Yehoshua. Now, the sequence of events and the laws governing Pesach have been our focus over the last several days. We've now concluded our Seder, and we are well into the 7 days of eating unleavened bread. Chag Matzot. Love that name. Even so, this Shabbat, we take another look at Pesach. It's almost as if we're just going back and making sure we haven't missed anything in our observance of Pesach over the last few days. And our portion this Shabbat begins in chapter 12, verse 22 of Shemot, with our Father's command that we take a bunch of hyssop, dip it in blood and that is in the basin, and strike the lintel and the two doorposts with the blood that is in the basin. How many of you ever seen pictures of men during that time? Not pictures, I guess drawings would be a better term, right? And they were, standing there with their basin of blood, and they were painting the blood on the doorpost and lintels. I was a little surprised when I read the way some English translations translate the word higatim, which is the word for strike. Now, the Scripture Bible actually does a better job capturing the essence of this word, because it says we're to take the hyssop and strike the doorposts and the lintels. Others, like the New American, suggest a much less aggressive word of apply. So in Mitzrayim, our forefathers were to use the hyssop to strike the doorposts and the lintels of the home. And that's what the root word of that word means, nagah. It means to touch. It can mean to touch improperly, but more appropriately in this verse it means to strike. Nagah is a very similar word, and it's used in the next verse for smite. So we get the idea that our forefathers in Mitzrayim were not just there dipping and painting or applying the blood. They were striking it onto it, hard as it could. And if you take hyssop and you strike on a doorpost, what does it do to the blood? It splatters it all over the place. Wow. Once again, the Hebrew text provides a much more vivid description of what our forefathers were required to do in Mitzrayim. Strike it on there. Strike the blood of the Pesach lamb on the doors, not in a calm, even relaxed mood of a feast, but striking it really demonstrates I really don't know what word to use there. You just slaughtered an innocent animal and collected its blood and skinned it alive. Skinned it, okay? And now you're throwing and striking. It really kind of shows you the horror of slaughtering an innocent animal. How terrible it was and the violence that it does. And when you take that and put it in context of the way our Passover lamb was slaughtered, the Messiah, you begin to see just how horrendous slaughtering the Passover lamb can be and the way the blood has to be applied. It's not a gentle process that they went through. Then the wording in verse 24 is also worthy of a Second, look. Jehovah commands the children of Israel, and you shall guard this word as a law for you and your sons forever. How many of you agree that's a fairly simple command, right? I mean, there's nothing complicated about it. You're to guard it forever, you and your sons. Okay? But how long is forever in this passage? Forever is from the word here, ad olam. And the word ad there is an aleph and a dalet. It means as far as or up until a certain point, being the point of olam, forever. Up until forever. Not through forever, but up until forever. So you get an idea that there's another message there. Okay? So if you're to guard it to that time, to olam. Now in Bereshith, or Genesis chapter 13, verse 15, Jehovah promised to give the land to the seed of Abraham forever. Same word. And that word olam is from the root word that's an ayin, a lamed, and a mem. And it means to hide. Forever is to hide. It's used in Psalms 46:1, where it refers to a mystery. And in Bereshith, or Genesis 24, 43, and 44, it's used to describe a young, undeveloped girl. All this alone. Remember, Abraham's servant had been sent to find a wife for Yitzchak. And he spoke with Jehovah as he did, and he said, see, I'm standing by the fountain of water, and when the maiden, Alma, from the same root word is olam, comes out to draw water, and I say to her, please give me a little water from your jar to drink. And she says, drink and let me draw for your camels too, that her be the woman whom Jehovah has appointed for master's son. Mystery, hidden things, undeveloped things. So what does all these words from this root word, olam, tell us about how long we're to guard our observance of Pesach? We are to guard it until we reach a time that has not yet been developed in this world, a time that remains hidden to us, a time in which we can only catch glimpses of in this life, and even then, as if we're looking through a glass darkly. It's evident we have not yet reached that time, have we? So it is very clear for the children of Israel that we are to continue keeping the Pesach until the time develops or whatever. It's not for us to decide, well, you know, that's old feast. They're done away with now. We have new ways of celebrating, so we don't have to keep. No, we have not reached the time yet that the Father has said, you don't have to keep Pesach ever again. We may never reach that time. But it's ad until forever. Now, so many people who claim to be the children of Elohim, or claim to be believers who have replaced the children of Elohim, which will never happen, they fail to guard this observance of Pesach. How many of you people that know good people out in the world that didn't observe Pesach this year, Passover? They're fooling themselves. Or they're being fooled by others into believing something that is simply not true. Passover, Pesach, is for all the children of Elohim. If they were truly a part of Elohim's people, which is Israel, a people who will never cease to be, a people who will never be replaced by another group of people, they would behave like the people of Israel. In verse 27, it describes the appropriate response to Jehovah's command to keep the Passover. When Israel heard Jehovah's word, the people bowed their heads and did obeisance. Bowed is translated from the word that means to bow one's head to the ground. Some even go so far to say without bending your knee. That's quite a bow. But what does the word obeisance mean? And forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that word correctly. That's one of the words I have trouble with. Some translate this word as worship. But the Hebrew word is shakah. It's the same, the root word of shakah is kavah, which means to protect. It's the same root word that's used for the name of Adam's wife. Some call her Eve. Her name was actually Chava, because Adam was to protect her. When our forefathers heard Jehovah's commands regarding Pesach, they bowed before him and they protected these commandments. They guarded them, they protected them, they watched over them. See, so many people have forgotten that part of worshiping our Father in heaven is obeying him and guarding his word. That's a form of worship as well. And they obeyed more than just these commandments as they made their way through the wilderness on into the land of Canaan that would eventually be known as Eretz Israel. In Yeshayahu chapter 5, Yehoshua chapter 5, we read that once they entered the land, Yehovah commanded the people to make flint knives for yourself and circumcise the sons of Israel again the second time. If you remember, Zipporah used a flint to circumcise her son. And so what did the people do when they heard the commandment from Yehovah? They circumcised the sons of Israel at the hill of foreskins. There were quite a few men to be circumcised in that day. This second circumcision was necessary because even though all the men of battle who had made the exodus had been circumcised, with the exception of Yehoshua and Caleb, all these men died in the wilderness, and they had not circumcised their sons. It tells us the men of battle who came out of Mitzrayim was consumed because they did not, there's that old word again, they did not obey the voice of Yehovah. So they died in the wilderness. So once again, we find that when the children of Israel heard the commands of the voice of Yehovah, they obeyed. We're told that in verse 7, and Yehoshua circumcised their sons whom he, Yehovah, raised up in their place, for they were uncircumcised because they had not been circumcised on the way. And once they had finished circumcising all the men, they stayed in that place until they were all healed. Then, after they had obeyed Yehovah, Yehovah told Yehoshua in verse 9, "Today I have rolled away the reproach of Mitzrayim from you." So the name of the place is called Gilgal to this day. Gilgal is from the root word. It's a Gimel Lamed Lamed, for those who want to look it up, that means to roll away or cast off. So if you're ever wondered why the name of the town is Gilgal, it's because there, when Israel acted in obedience to Yehovah's command and circumcised all their men, he rolled away their shame of Mitzrayim. It also brought another very special gift. As Yehoshua stood by Jericho, readying himself and his men for battle, because they would soon be marching against the most fortified city in the world, in verse 13 we are told he lifted his eyes and looked and saw a man standing opposite him with his sword drawn in his hand. Now there is no doubt in my mind or my heart that this was the same man that Balaam saw standing in his way with his sword drawn and in his hand when he was going to curse the children of Israel and had the conversation with his donkey. Okay. Now when Balaam saw this man, he bowed his head and fell on his face. Sound familiar? When Yehoshua saw this man, he went up to him and said, "Are you for us or for our adversaries?" And I love the response that he got. The man replied, No, for I have come now as captain of the host of Jehovah. And Yehoshua fell on his face to the earth and did obeisance and said to him, What is my master saying to his servant? And the captain of the host of Jehovah said to Yehoshua, Take your sandal off your foot, for the place where your stand is set apart. And Yehoshua did. I mean, he walked. I mean, it's understandable. You're in charge of the army of Israel, armed with shofars first, then the swords. And you see a man standing there, and you want to know, well, whose side are you on? And basically, what he was told was, I'm on neither side. I'm here to take over. Moshe had a similar experience at Mount Horeb when he saw the bush that was burning and not being consumed, remember? The fact that this man did not tell Yehoshua not to bow before him tells us what? What happened when men encountered messengers, angels, if for lack of a better term, if that's what you're familiar with? What happened throughout Scripture when men encountered angels, messengers, and they bowed before them? What did the messenger tell them? Don't bow. Get up. So when you find a messenger that doesn't say, tell him to get up, what does that tell us? That's the Messiah. That's him. Okay? Yeah, he's doing the right thing. You're bowing before him. Matter of fact, he said, take your sandal off your foot because the place you're standing is set apart. Anywhere our Father is, anywhere his Son is holy. It's set apart. Kind of makes you want to slide your boots off, doesn't it? But think of what it's telling us. We find something else very important when the children of Israel obey the voice of our Father. When we turn to guarding and protecting his commandments. His Son comes into our lives to guard and guide us in our battles. The Son coming to be a part of us and among us is a reward for our obedience and protecting his commandments. How much better can it get? Now, our reading from the second writings is from chapter 10 of the book of John. And there's no doubt who's speaking in this chapter, is it? In this passage, the Messiah himself declares, I am the good shepherd, and I know mine, and mine know me. Even as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. I lay down my life for the sheep. And other sheep I have, which are not of this fold. I have to bring them in as well. And they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one flock, one shepherd. He explained to them that no one would take his life from him. Contrary to popular belief, we did not crucify the Messiah. He laid his life down and let us do what they chose to do. He had the authority from his Father to do this, and he did it voluntarily. Now, the Greek term there means he did this of himself, which just simply means no one forced him to do it. The Father didn't force him to do it. He gave of himself because of his love for the Father and for his creation. Now, upon hearing what he was saying, some people thought he was mad, as in being possessed by a demon. Others argue that no one possessed by a demon could open the eyes of the blind. There was some confusion about the Messiah even in that day by some of the people. Then, during Hanukkah, some of the Yehudim approached him and asked, how long are you going to keep us in suspense? If you're the Messiah, just tell us. And you know the problem with that? He had already told them over and over. And he responded and said, I have told you, and you did not believe. The works that I do in my Father's name, they witness concerning me. And then he said, but you do not believe because why? You are not my sheep. Ooh. As I said to you, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. I give them everlasting life, and they shall by no means perish, and no one shall snatch them out of my hand. My Father, who has given them to me, is greater than all, and no one is able to snatch them out of my Father's hands. There's only one person that can remove you from the Father's hands, and that's yourself. Okay? But he says, my sheep hear my voice, and they follow me. Pretty clear, isn't it? If you belong in his sheepfold, if you belong to the Messiah, you hear his voice and follow him. Everybody in agreement? Good, I'm setting you up. What are some of the things that his sheep hear him say and follow him in doing? Matthew 4:4. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Jehovah. Now, what happens if people decide we can set some of those words aside because they were nailed to the cross and done away with? You're not hearing what the Messiah said, and you're not following in his footsteps because he kept even the least of them. So his sheep hear his voice and follow him, living by every word that proceeds from the Father's mouth. It doesn't matter who says what about being done away with, changed, altered. We have the authority up. It doesn't matter. We follow what our Father has said. He said in Matthew chapter 5, I did not come to destroy the Torah or the prophets. For truly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away. Does anybody need to run outside to make sure heaven and earth is still there before I go any further? Or will you take my word for it that heaven and earth has not passed away yet? That's right. Go look for yourself. Okay. For I truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle shall by no means pass from the Torah till all be done. Not even the jots and tittles are going to be passing through the Torah till all be done. He has not returned yet. The millennial kingdom has not been established. We haven't been judged. Sukkot hasn't got. So it's not all been done, so not one word has passed away. That's what his sheep hear and believe and follow. And he said, keep even the least commandments and teach them to others. Even the least commandments. That doesn't mean only the least commandments. It means all of them, even the least. That's what his sheep hear and follow him doing. He also said, the gate is narrow and the way is hard pressed, which leads to life, and there are few who find it. If there's such a thing as a scary passage in the second writings, this is one that causes me a lot of unease. Few who find the way to life. He is the way to life. How can they miss him? He also said that a taught one is not above his teacher, nor a servant above his master. It is enough for a taught one to become like his teacher and a servant like his master. That's in Matthew 10:24 and 25. Now, if I am to become like my teacher, what would that mean? I'd do the same things he did. I'd think like he did. I'd teach like he did. I would attend the same feast days that he attended. I would keep the same Sabbath that he attended because I hear his voice and I follow him. But now, and just a simple truth, okay? If you hear the master saying that and you say, well, the master's done all that and he fully, I don't have to be like him anymore. I can go off and do this. Are you really hearing the voice of your master? Shelby said something the other night. Can you remember what you told me about, learning to be like the Messiah, and then once you learned it, can you finish that out? About the teacher. Yeah. Yeah, he teaches all this thing, sets the example for us to follow, and then all of a sudden we're supposed to believe he said, okay, now all that's done away with, go do whatever, something different. No. If you hear his voice, you're going to hear his words, and you're going to follow and do what he did. Okay? Now, he also said, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. If you ever need fodder for debate, there's one. But that's what he said. Well, that means that leaves me out. No, that means invites you to join in to the house of Israel. Open invitation, right? Now, he didn't say this, but I want to quote this from Luke chapter 4, verse 16. And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and according to his practice, he went into the congregation on the Sabbath day and stood up for to read. Kind of tells you what the Messiah thought about the Sabbath day, right? And if we're going to follow him, if we'd have been living back in those days, where would we have followed him on the Sabbath? Where would we have followed him on the first day of the week? If he was here today, where would we follow him on the Sabbath? Do we hear his voice? Do we see the example he set, and are we following it? He also said in Yochanan 3:36, he who believes in the Son possesses everlasting life. That's the best news you're going to hear today. But he also said, but he who does not obey the Son shall not see that life, but the wrath of Elohim remains upon him. You've got to hear him, believe him, and follow him. You've got to obey him. And part of what we read today in Yochanan 10:35, he said, and it is impossible for Scripture to be broken. Somehow a lot of people miss that one. It is impossible for Scripture to be broken. It was set, written in stone, and handed down to us. The Father will not break his word or his covenant. He will not change it. Messiah said, if anyone loves me, he shall guard my word, and my Father shall love him, and we shall come to him and make our stay with him. He who does not love me does not guard my words. And then the passage that so many skip over. And the word which you hear is not mine, but the Father who sent me. He told him as he prayed that night in Gethsemane. He told his Father, I have given them your word, and the word hated them because they are not of this world, as I am not of this world. Have we followed him and not become a part of this world? And then he told them, he said, set them apart in your word. Your word is truth. Yochanan 17:17. In Psalms 119, I think it's 160, says, the sum of your word is truth. The totality of the Father's word is truth. And the Messiah prayed that his followers would be set apart in that truth, the totality of his word. And then he said in verse 20, I do not pray for these alone, but also for those believing in me through their word. How many of us believe in our Messiah because of the things he said, he taught, his Talmudim said and taught? So if you've accepted that, then you're part of this, that he wants to be set apart in the world by the truth. So have you heard the voice of your shepherd today? Straight out of his word. Do you hear what he has said, or are you like so many others and you're listening a little bit to the good shepherd and a lot more to some other shepherds who have interpreted this and really understand what it means. So they say. The Messiah said, I'm the good shepherd. Listen to me. I've come to give you the word of my Father. Which word? How many commandments did the Messiah reinstate? I hate that term. He didn't have to reinstate something that had never been done away with, that so many people say, well, the Messiah only reinstated so many commandments. When he said keep even the least commandments, that covers all of them. He didn't leave any out. How can you know the difference between the good shepherd and other shepherds? Does what the other shepherds line up with what the good shepherd said? If it doesn't, it's not of him. If you have heard his voice and yet you're not guarding and protecting what he has taught, then according to what I've just read this morning, according to what the Messiah taught, not me, though I'm glad to stand here and teach it, because I trust every word that he said. So if you've heard his voice and you're not guarding, protecting what he has taught, then you're not part of his sheep. You're in a different fold that belongs to somebody else. If you're not obeying the good shepherd, you're in danger of one day hearing him say, depart from me, you workers of lawlessness, for I never knew you. But if you will heed his voice and guard his commands, he promises to give you everlasting life, and you shall by no means perish, and no one will snatch you out of his hand. And what does he ask in return for his promises? That we have the testimony that he is our Messiah and Redeemer, that we guard the commandments of Elohim. That's what he asks for all that he promises. This includes rejecting the tradition of men, rejecting the ways of the nations and guarding his appointed times, his Sabbath, and walking in his ways. It means circumcising your heart so that the circumcising of your flesh means something. Remember what he said through the prophets? No man uncircumcised in heart or flesh will in no way enter into my temple, my presence. It means laying down your life. What does it mean to lay down your life? It doesn't mean to step out there and walk in front of a Mack truck, okay? What does it mean to lay down your life? Your will, your desires, your dreams, what you want, so you can take up your life again. A greater life, a more abundant life. But this is something you have to do yourself. You have to voluntarily lay down your life so you can take it up again with him. Now, if you ever wonder just how much Jehovah and his Son loves you, you don't have to look any further than his appointed times. Really. Pesach, unleavened bread, first fruits, the Messiah's crucifixion, death, and resurrection. You don't have to look any further than his feast. And even his fall feast, when he returns, judges, and sets up his millennial kingdom. So if you really want to see how much the Father loves you, look at these feasts that we're celebrating. The question is, how far does our Father or someone else have to look to see how much you love him? If they look at your life and the way you're living, what you're saying, what you're teaching, what feast you're keeping, what days you're worshiping on, if they look at you, how far would they have to go to see how much you love the Father? Are you living by every word that proceeds out of his mouth? Or a selective few? What is his name? And what is his Son's name if you know it? You'd be surprised how many people do not know the Son's name. You'd be surprised how many people don't know our Father's name. You may not be surprised at how many people forbid you to know their and speak their name. King Shlomo wrote, what is his name and what is his son's name, if you know it. Every word of Elohim, is tried. He is a shield for those taking refuge in him. Do not add to his word, lest he reprove you, and you be found to be a, what? A liar. If you've added to his word, he's going to prove that you're lying. If you've taken away from his word, he's going to prove that you're lying. If you change his appointed times that he says are eternal, he's going to prove you're lying. Is that what it said? I really don't want anybody living here thinking I said something that you disagree with. I'm wanting to quote straight from Scripture. So if you've left the sheepfold, his sheepfold, it's time to come home. It's time to get back in his sheepfold. And if you've never grafted into his sheep, the lost sheep of the house of Israel, now is the time to do it while there is still time to graft in. The day is coming when that door, just like the door on the ark, is going to close. But if you want to graft into his people, it's got to be done according to his word, his way, and his covenant. Not by what man wants it to say or man wants it to be. He's a jealous El. He's given us his word, and we've butchered his word. Man has butchered his word. He gave us his son. We slaughtered that too. It's time to come home. It's time to stand washed in the blood of the Passover lamb, sealed in the blood in the covenant with our Father, and living by every word that proceeds out of his mouth, just like our Messiah did. And with that, I'm going to say Shabbat Shalom. Thoughts?